On June 25, 2020, a company that had been worth $24 billion filed for insolvency in a matter of days. Its chief operating officer disappeared and has not been seen since. Its CEO was arrested, and $1.9 billion that the company claimed to have in 2 bank accounts in the Philippines simply did not exist. It never had. This is the story of Wirecard, once Germany's answer to PayPal, a company so trusted it was included in the DAX 30, the index of Germany's most valuable companies, alongside Volkswagen, Siemens, and Deutsche Bank. And it was, almost from the beginning, an elaborate fiction. Wirecard was founded in 1999 in Munich, Germany, originally processing payments for online gambling and adult content websites, businesses that traditional banks did not want to touch. By the mid-2000s, under new leadership, the company repositioned itself as a legitimate payment processing technology firm, helping businesses accept credit card and digital payments online. Markus Braun became Chief Executive Officer in 2002. Braun cultivated an image as a visionary, often photographed in a black turtleneck, drawing comparisons to Steve Jobs. He held a significant stake in the company and was, on paper, one of the richest men in Germany. Jan Marsalek joined Wirecard and rose to become Chief Operating Officer. Marsalek was charismatic, well-connected, and according to later reporting, cultivated relationships with intelligence officials and individuals connected to Russian intelligence services. At the time, none of this raised alarm bells. Wirecard grew rapidly. The company expanded into Asia, claiming massive revenue growth from payment processing operations in countries including the Philippines, Singapore, and Dubai. In September 2018, Wirecard was added to the DAX 30, replacing Commerzbank, one of Germany's oldest banks. The symbolism was enormous. A payment processing fintech company, barely 2 decades old, had displaced a bank that had existed since 1870. German business media celebrated Wirecard as proof that Germany could produce world-class technology companies, not just car manufacturers. At its peak in 2018, Wirecard's market value exceeded $24 billion, making it worth more than Deutsche Bank itself. But for years before this, a small group of journalists at the Financial Times had been receiving tips that something was deeply wrong. Dan McCrum, an investigative journalist at the Financial Times, began receiving documents and information suggesting that Wirecard's Asian operations, which accounted for a huge portion of its reported profits, were largely fictional. Sources, including former employees, alleged that revenue and profit figures from subsidiaries in Singapore and other Asian markets were inflated or entirely fabricated through fake contracts with third-party partners. In January 2019, the Financial Times published its first major story alleging accounting irregularities at Wirecard's Singapore office. Wirecard responded aggressively. The company denied the allegations, suggested the Financial Times was being manipulated by short sellers seeking to profit from a falling stock price. And German financial regulator BaFin took the extraordinary step of opening an investigation not into Wirecard, but into the journalists and short sellers themselves, and even temporarily banned short selling of Wirecard stock. For a time, this strategy worked. Wirecard stock recovered. Markus Braun appeared on television calling the allegations baseless. The company hired the global accounting firm KPMG to conduct a special independent audit to clear its name once and for all. This is where the story should have ended for Wirecard, with a clean audit restoring confidence. Instead, in April 2020, KPMG released its special audit report. The report did not find evidence to support the fraud allegations conclusively. But more damningly, KPMG stated it could not verify a significant portion of Wirecard's profits from 2016 through 2018 because the company had failed to provide sufficient documentation, particularly regarding its third-party acquiring business in Asia. This was not the exoneration Wirecard needed. Then came June 2020. Wirecard's longtime auditor, the global accounting firm EY Ernst & Young, had signed off on Wirecard's financial statements for years, including statements showing €1.9 billion held in trust accounts at 2 banks in the Philippines, BDO Unibank and Bank of the Philippine Islands. On June 18, 2020, EY refused to sign off on Wirecard's 2019 annual report. stating that they could not confirm the existence of the 1.9 billion euros in cash. Wirecard had to delay its annual report. The next day, both Philippine banks issued statements saying the documents purporting to show Wirecard funds held with them were forged and that Wirecard was not a client. 1.9 billion euros, roughly 25% of Wirecard's entire balance sheet, simply did not exist. The company that German regulators had defended, that was part of the country's blue chip stock index, that was audited every year by one of the world's largest accounting firms, had been claiming to possess a quarter of its assets in bank accounts that were fictional. On June 22, 2020, Markus Braun resigned as chief executive officer. The following day, June 23rd, he was arrested by German authorities on suspicion of falsifying Wirecard's accounts and market manipulation. He was later released on bail of 5 million euros. Jan Marsalek, the chief operating officer, was supposed to be the one with answers about the Asian operations and the third-party partners who supposedly handled the missing funds. On June 19, 2020, the day after EY refused to sign the accounts, Marsalek was reportedly fired, though he claimed he resigned. On June 23, German prosecutors issued an arrest warrant for Marsalek. He had already fled the country. Marsalek flew first to Belarus and then, according to extensive investigative reporting by Bellingcat and other outlets, onto Russia, where he is believed to remain, protected by individuals connected to Russian intelligence services. He has been on Interpol's most wanted list since 2020 and has never been apprehended. Some reporting suggests he may have died or been killed, though this has never been confirmed, and other reporting suggests he remains alive and active. On June 25, 2020, Wirecard filed for insolvency, listing liabilities of more than 3 billion euros, $24 billion in market value gone in days. Roughly 1,500 employees lost their jobs. Investors, including many German retail investors who had trusted a DAX 30 company, lost everything. The collapse triggered a political crisis in Germany. How had BaFin, the financial regulator, spent years investigating journalists instead of the company they were reporting on? How had EY, auditing the company for over a decade, never independently verified that 1.9 billion euros in cash actually existed in named bank accounts, something that should have been one of the most basic audit procedures? A German parliamentary inquiry was launched. Felix Hufeld, the head of BaFin, was forced to resign. EY faced lawsuits from investors and scrutiny over its audit practices, eventually being banned from taking on new audit clients in Germany for 2 years as a sanction. Markus Braun went on trial in Munich in late 2022, facing charges including fraud, breach of trust and market manipulation, accused of running a criminal organisation that fabricated revenues for years to deceive investors and lenders. The trial is one of the largest corporate fraud trials in German history, involving thousands of pages of evidence and dozens of witnesses, and as of the most recent proceedings has stretched on for years given its complexity. Braun has denied wrongdoing, claiming he was himself deceived by Marsalek and others. The Wirecard case remains one of the starkest examples in modern European history of how a company can present an almost entirely fictional set of finances, be celebrated as a national technology champion, be promoted into a blue-chip stock index, pass annual audits by a major global accounting firm for years, and have its critics investigated by the very regulator that should have been scrutinizing the company itself. The lesson of Wirecard is not simply that fraud happened. It is that an entire ecosystem of regulators, auditors, financial journalists, and investors operated around this company for years. And the system worked exactly backwards. The people asking the right questions were treated as the threat. The company making the claims that should have triggered scrutiny was treated as the victim. And somewhere, possibly in Moscow, the man who oversaw the operations, where 1.9 billion euros vanished, has never had to answer a single question in a courtroom.